Thank you. Join me in the book of Proverbs as we continue to consider the subject of becoming wise. How do we, especially as those who believe in Jesus, how do we increasingly have the character of Jesus formed in us? What the New Testament calls sanctification, the Old Testament calls wisdom. So the book of Proverbs is excellent teaching to not only help us know how life works best, like grain of wood that has a pattern and an order. So life, because God made it, has a pattern and an order. So the Proverbs help us know that pattern, know that order, and live in alignment with it. But they also leave a trail of truths that when we follow them rightly take us all the way to the embodiment of wisdom, which is the person of Jesus Christ. So last week, we began to consider the subject of the tongue. We looked at this proverb from chapter 18 that says, "Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruits. Sticks and stones may break your bones, but names will never hurt you," is a lie. The truth is, death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruit. So we began to consider last week the reality that your words matter. You can speak life into a person, and you can speak death. So we looked at this other proverb that says, like one's rash words can be sword thrusts. We can cause death with our words. So we learned these truths and followed them all the way to Jesus to be reminded that Jesus is the full expression of God's speech. So he is referred to as the Word. He is the embodiment of God's revelation. Speech is revelation, disclosure, making yourself known. Jesus is the fullness of God's speech. So Jesus is the one whose words bring healing. Healing for the one who has been cut by another's words. If you carry deep wounds from when you were young or recently, from the sword thrusts of others, you can find healing in the word of Christ. His word spoken over you, believed, internalized, practiced, heals the wounds from others because his word is eternal and is a truer word. You can find healing for the wounds that others have inflicted upon you. And you can find healing for your guilt, for the wounds that your words have caused others. This morning we're going to continue for another week to consider the subject of speech, and this week become increasingly practical. If death and life are in the power of the tongue, how do you speak words of life? How do you exercise the power that God has entrusted to you to be one who speaks life? Who gives courage to people who are discouraged, who offers clarity to those who are confused, who lovingly offers a word of correction to a believer who is losing their way. How do you speak life? This morning we're going to look at various proverbs that will help you, if it's your desire, to be someone who consistently speaks life. Whether it's to your relationships that are damaged, this is how you should speak. If it's relationships you want to build up, a spouse, a grandkid, a parent, a coworker, a neighbor, these are the kinds of words you have to use. If you want to know the joy and the satisfaction of giving life to people, these are the words we have to use. Now, I want to be completely upfront. Much of what I'm going to share this morning, I have learned. By a show of hands, how many of you have heard the name Tim Keller, Timothy Keller? He was a very well-known and fruitful pastor in New York City who died in the past year. I have learned an immense amount about God and the scriptures and life from him. I never had the privilege of meeting him in person, but I've listened to much of his teaching over the years. And almost 20 years ago, he did a teaching through the book of Proverbs that is more insightful than anything I could ever do. So what I'm going to share with you this morning is part of an outline that he used on this same subject. So here's the message if you want to hear it. I just want you to know where it came from. Okay, so there are 4 categories, 4 attributes maybe, that I want us to look at this morning. Now, the distinction between these things aren't like completely hard and fast. There's lots of overlap. The colors bleed into one another a little bit. But here are 4 areas. If you want to speak words of life, this is how the Proverbs describes them. The first is honest. Honest speech contrasted to speech that is deceptive. Honest speech. A man who bears false witness against his neighbor, look at this image, is like a war club or a sword or a sharp arrow. I mean, that's a brutal image, a war club. Your words, when they are not truthful, when they are not honest, can have the effect of a person of beating them with a club. Would you ever beat a person to death with a golf club? God forbid. But your words have that power when they are not truthful. Words of life are words that are honest. Righteous lips are the delight of a king, and he loves him who speaks what is right. Truthful lips endure forever, but a lying tongue is but for a moment. Truthful lips, righteous lips. This is how we ought to speak. Words that are true. So Paul picks this up in the book of Ephesians, and he says, rather, speaking the truth in love, we are to grow up in every way into him who is the head, into Jesus. So if our words must be truthful, what is truth? What is truth? You need to know how to define truth. Truth is that which corresponds to reality. That's how you know something is true, if it corresponds to reality. Our culture seems to be getting increasingly confused on the point of what truth is. Somehow we have begun to relativize truth or make truth somehow subjective. Truth is that which corresponds to reality. So the color of my shirt is a color. To some of you, it may look like it's black, depending on the light or where you're sitting. Some of you, if the light is a little bit blue, it may look purple. My shirt isn't black. Even if to you it looks black, it's not purple. My shirt is navy blue. My shirt color is not determined and actually doesn't care what you think the color is, what you want the color to be. Doesn't matter what you feel like the color is. It doesn't even matter what color I tell you it is. Truth is that which corresponds to reality. Is your speech consistent with reality? Okay, let's make this practical. We'll start by thinking about how much we all hate when people are deceptive with their speech. Let's think about it in advertising. How consistently are products represented and sold inconsistent with the reality of the actual product? Right? If you're looking for something online and it comes with a lifetime warranty, you're like, what does that even mean? And you read the fine print and it excludes everything. You're like, okay, if the product spontaneously combusts in the first 30 days, the manufacturer will replace it. Otherwise, sorry. We don't like it when products aren't just told us straightforward. Have you tried to buy a vehicle recently and you just want to know how much does the car cost? Good luck getting a price. So we say, like, no, just tell me what's the out the door cost. I don't get, just tell me when I leave here how much you're going to charge my credit card. We don't like when people don't deal with us honestly. We get frustrated with politicians all over the spectrum that twist words, manipulate words, spin words. Don't you hate it when you get the sense somebody is trying to manipulate what you think or feel about a subject instead of them just telling you what it is? We all hate that. When you speak, do you speak words that correspond with reality? Do you tell people the truth? Or are you trying to nuance it, to spin it? to change their perspective, or are you just committed to speaking the truth? In Proverbs, speech that is the opposite of truthful is considered crooked. Metaphorically, it's crooked. When something is straight, it's true. It's consistent with reality. When it's crooked or perverse is another word. It's untruthful. So Proverbs 15:4 says, "A gentle tongue is a tree of life, but perverseness in it breaks the spirit." You have felt what that's like. Many of you have. In trying to love someone or help someone or even listen to someone who does not speak the truth. How frustrating can it be as parents wanting to help kids and you just want to know what actually happened? How frustrating can it be with friends, especially when you try to mediate friendship through online mediums? You just want to know what actually happened. We need to be people. If we want to speak words of life, we have to speak consistent with reality, especially as Christians. We have a word. We have a word of life fully in Christ. If you've developed the habit of being loose with your words, of not being careful to speak the truth on any subject, then why, when it comes to the subject of God, why should a person believe what you're saying? Words of life are words that are honest. The second category, words of life are words that are honest and gentle. Let's stay in Proverbs 15:4. Look at the other part of the saying. A gentle tongue is a tree of life. Part of what I find so captivating about the Proverbs is the richness of the imagery. A tree of life. A tree that gives shade to the ground beneath it. A tree that gives shelter to birds of the air and squirrels. A tree of life that produces fruit. A tree of life that is beautiful to look at. Gentle words are a tree of life. Gracious words are like a honeycomb. Raise your hands if you've ever bitten into a honeycomb, not the cereal, like an actual honeybee honeycomb. Show of hands. What's remarkable about honey? Two things that the Proverbs point out. One, it's sweet, like no kidding. Who didn't know that? Honey is also good for you. A gentle word. Yeah, it's easier to hear. It's also good for you. Words of life are words of truth. They're gentle. Why, when we think of gentle words, why do we think of words that are weak or that lack power? That's not actually true. It certainly doesn't have to be. 25:15, with patience, a ruler may be persuaded, and a soft tongue will break a bone. The commentators suggest that this imagery of breaking a bone is a tearing down or a defeating of an argument. Sometimes we think in order for me to win an argument about something that is important, even about the truth, that somehow I have to match your intensity, speak with more intensity, be louder, be harder. A soft answer breaks a bone. Don't believe the lie that the only way to be persuasive or to get your point across is to be harsh. A soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Many of you have experienced this. Somebody comes at you with anger. They're hard, they're pointed. When they bring that towards you, what happens if you answer them in kind? Someone's barking at you and they're furious. When you answer back in that same way, what happens? You've experienced this. It just escalates the fight. You see a fire and you just put gas on it. It just came out of you. A gentle answer turns away wrath. I hope you have experienced that. If you haven't, try it. The next time someone comes to you in anger, answer with a gentle word. Most of the time, it turns away wrath. Remember, the Proverbs aren't promises. Normally, now, they're true. Ultimately, they're always true. Normally now, it is true. If a person comes at you in anger and you respond with a gentle word, it dissipates their wrath. So what is a gentle word? Is it just spoken in a gentle tone? Is it spoken softly? What makes a gentle word gentle? I think we can get a glimpse by looking at the opposite. So 15:1, the opposite of the soft answer is a harsh word. Harsh has the connotation of inducing pain or hurting another person. It gets at motive. Why are you speaking this word to a person? A word that is gentle is a word that is spoken in love. Okay, so what's love? A commitment to act in the highest good of another. Do you speak words to other people for their highest good? Sometimes that's a word that's negative. A gentle answer isn't something that is flimsy, that may or may not have substance, that you say to only calm a person down. A gentle word is a word that is spoken in love to build somebody up, even if they need to be corrected. Now, how easy is it? How easy is it to say, I'm just speaking the truth. Yep, I agree with you. Life-giving speech is honest. I'm just calling it like it is. You ever heard somebody say that? I'm just calling it like it is. People need to hear the truth. Hey, a person says, well, aren't you a little over the top? Someone's got to tell them. We just got to speak the truth. I'm standing on the truth. As though our options are either stand on the truth like jerks or not affirm the truth and be nice to people. That's a false distinction. A gentle word is a truthful word that is spoken for the building up of others. Not just a truthful word, whatever the cost. It must be a truthful word that is gentle. I've been guilty of speaking words that are true, that are not gentle. This is really easy to do with kids. That you just want to put them in their place, get them to be quiet, make the problem go away, try to just make your point in the shortest, simplest way, instead of speaking a word for their benefit, not just a word that is consistent with reality. So words of life, they're honest, they're gentle. A good question you can ask yourself: if you have to speak a word to someone that isn't positive, you have to move towards a person with correction. And as believers, we need people willing to correct us, to offer a different perspective. If you're convinced that truth requires you to say a hard thing to a person, well, check your motive, make sure you're doing it in love, and then you could ask yourself, when you bring this up to the person, will that person see the pain that it causes you to bring it up? You don't make it about you, like, this is going to be harder for me than it is for you, and this is really hard for me to say. No, you don't put yourself at the center, but will the person see in your tone of voice, in the manner in which you speak, in the words you choose, will they see that you offer this word in care? Because if there's no pain for you in saying a hard thing to a person, then maybe that's an indication that it's not actually spoken in love. Honest words that are not deceptive, gentle words that aren't harsh. Now, direct words. Now, I'm struggling to find the best single word for this. I chose direct, but this has forthright, clear, transparent, open, courageous. Those are all synonyms in this case. Verses a hidden word, a veiled word, a cowardly silence. Right? Especially if we're committed to the truth and we're committed to doing it in love, there comes a time when we have to be willing to be direct, to speak clearly. Proverbs 10:18. This proverb is a bit of a pickle, a bit of a riddle. The one who conceals hatred has lying lips. The one who hides hatred has lying lips. Think about that. I mean, I would say if you got hatred, it might actually be a good idea to keep it to yourself. This is trying to get us to think about being direct. Whoever utters slander is a fool. 28:23, whoever rebukes a man will afterward find more favor than he who flatters with his tongue. Better is open rebuke than hidden love. If we are committed, if you and your friends are committed, if we as a church are committed together to pursue the way of Jesus, we have to speak words of life. That's honest, that's gentle, and that very often requires directness. We have to speak. And it can be very difficult to speak a word of correction or to ask a curious question, but we have to be willing to speak directly. Better is open rebuke than hidden love. Some of the most powerful words of life ever spoken to me were words of rebuke. About 20 years ago, I was starting to be a pastor. I was a pastor at the chapel in Green, working with young married couples and young families. And I can see this, now I see it much more clearly than I did then. But I started to see it then, and I wasn't willing to address it. My own arrogance. Like, there is a real temptation when you have the privilege and the responsibility to teach people the Word of God. There's a real temptation to overestimate your own worth or value. Like, anybody who has the privilege of speaking in front of another group, in this context a pastor, like, how many times in a week do you get to stand in front of a couple of hundred people and have them attentively listen to what you're saying? I get to do that twice a week, and I've been going on 20 years. When I'm not careful, it makes me feel like I'm really pretty special. I really am pretty insightful, really pretty godly. And I'm kind of funny. Doggone it, people like me. This was starting to take root in my heart 20 years ago. There was an older man, a wiser man, who loved me enough to speak the truth gently and directly. Jay Halley came to my office, sat down in a chair by my desk, and said, nice encouraging things, but I don't remember those. He got to the point for which he came, and he said, Zach, your pride is going to be a limitation in ministry. There it was. Just, okay. Well, now I can't pretend that it doesn't exist. I can't pretend other people don't see it, because this man loved me enough to speak directly. He didn't drop hints and hope I would see it. He just wounded me. And it was a gift. It has altered the trajectory of my life because someone was willing to speak directly to me. Better is open rebuke than hidden love. Don't hide love. Some of you need to be spurred on to be reminded that in the Spirit you have to directly speak words that might be hard for another person to hear. Some of you need to learn and practice that in the Spirit you have to speak words of affirmation, of praise, of affection. Generations, 2-3 generations ago, this seemed to be a huge problem for lots of men in our culture. This is one way I think our culture has actually improved, that we understand that a man, fully masculine, speaks words of affirmation and life. This wasn't always the case. Some of you have a hard time looking at your spouse square in the eye, holding their hands and saying, I love you. I am proud of you. I am excited to be your spouse. We need to speak words like this to our kids, to our grandkids, to our friends. Some of you that are older maybe have never or very infrequently heard your parents look you in the eye and say that they love you. Say to them, I love you. It's not too late to change that pattern in your family. Don't hide affection. This isn't just men who struggle with this, but it is more common. Be direct. Do you have a habit of the people that are closest to you? Do you have the habit of speaking words of life to them? Finding the things that you're proud about in them. Finding what is praiseworthy and speaking it. Don't leave it unsaid. Speak. Words of life. They are words that are honest, words that are gentle, words that are direct. Lastly, they're words that are fitting versus careless. Words that are appropriate, words that are apt, words that are well chosen, well crafted versus careless or flippant. Proverbs 25 says, a fitly spoken word is like apples of gold in a setting of silver. How do you get a golden apple? You make one. What kind of effort does it take to make a gold apple? I don't know. I've never made a gold apple. So I'm working on the imagery just like you are. Let's imagine we got a hunk of gold. How are we going to turn it into an apple? With craftsmanship, with care, with attentiveness. An appropriate word, a well-spoken word. It's like an apple of gold in a setting of silver. Where do you get a setting of silver? You make it. This is about well-chosen speech. Like a gold ring or an ornament of gold is a wise reprover to a listening ear. This is all about the right word at the right time. This requires a consideration of who you are speaking to. Do you do this when you talk? Do you consider the audience? Do you consider the circumstances that the person is in? Right? When a person is just emotionally unburdening themselves, when they're emotionally vomiting on you and those around, when they're just distraught or mourning, is that the time to correct them on a little point of minutia? No, I hope you don't do that. It's completely not the right time. When a person is feeling alone, do you think that's the right time to remind them of their responsibility in making friends? Probably not. When a person is experiencing loss, and they're mourning, and they're grieving, and they're feeling overwhelmed, do you think that's the time to remind them? Well, the Bible says we should rejoice in all things. Probably not. A word of life is well chosen. You consider the individual. Don't you talk to someone who has been constantly beaten down as a child? They never measured up. They were constantly corrected. You're too this, not enough this, not enough that. Don't you approach that person differently if you do need to correct them than a person who grew up and all they ever heard was, you are awesome. All your thoughts are awesome. Your paintings are perfect. You should be an artist. Your songs are wonderful. Your music is fantastic. You're the best athlete I've ever seen. Oh, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Wouldn't you approach these two people differently? Of course you would. Words of life are given in consideration of can they be heard? It's not helpful. It's not a word of life when we only think about ourselves as the one who has to give it. Do you speak to people? Do you do everything you can for them to be able to hear you? If you were here last week, I shared a story about wrestling, and I was a terrible wrestler, and my dad spoke a word of life to me. My dad and mom were here last Sunday, so they stuck around for a couple days. It was either Sunday afternoon or Monday afternoon. My dad said, hey, can we talk about the wrestling story? My dad and I had never spoken about it. But it's like, I forgot about that. Until you were telling that story, like, can we talk about that? Because I remember exactly what happened. Like, by all means, I like that story. Tell me. This is an illustration of a very well-spoken word. How do you know how do you know if it's time to speak or be quiet or what to say or how? The Spirit will guide you. If the Spirit lives in you, you can say, God, help me. Speak a word of life. Help me know. And He will. Okay, so this is what happened. The wrestling meet was apparently on a Friday. My dad said the only way he ever could have been there is if it was on a Friday. It was the first wrestling meet my dad had ever been to for me. My dad was a fantastic athlete in everything he ever tried to do. I was a very good athlete in everything I tried to do except wrestling. My dad, like many men of his generation, at this point in his life, my dad was in his, I guess he would have been in his early 40s-ish. He had not yet learned how to speak words of life. His father never did. I knew my dad loved me, but it wasn't because he told me all the time. I mean, he told me sometime, but my dad didn't learn till later in life. You got to speak. Okay, so my dad comes to this wrestling meet expecting me to be a good wrestler. Some of you have experienced this. You go watch your kid in an event or your grandkid in an event, and you're like, oh, might need to get a little bit of coaching there. So my dad has all that going on. I am getting whooped on the mat. My dad is disappointed. My dad is thinking, I wonder if he's feeling pressure, like, because his dad is here and he wants to make his dad proud. I wasn't, but my dad was thinking about that and wondering about that, and I got my butt whooped. So in the car ride home, my dad said, I was more dejected than he had ever seen me before. He said, you were so low. He said, I didn't know what to say to you. But I knew I needed to say something. And I didn't do a very good job telling you boys, I have 2 brothers, how I was proud of you. But I knew I needed to say something. So I just asked God, help me say something. And what came out of my dad's mouth, he is certain, what he said to me was, I love how you compete. Now, like from one manner of perspective, he could have done better. I mean, I love how you compete because you were getting your butt whooped, but you persevered. And I like how hard you practice. And actually, while we're talking about it, you're really good at baseball. Like, you're just a son, and I'm proud of you for all these things. No, we didn't go there. We just got one thing. We got, I love how you compete. And it went to the very core of my soul. That is a well-spoken word. You can speak words of life. You can ask God to help you. You see a person who needs life. You can ask God to help you. Spirit, help me know a word to speak. And the pressure isn't on you by yourself to come up with a poetic masterpiece. You may just have to say to somebody, I love how you compete. And it may be used by God for the rest of their life to give them life. Words of life are words that are true, words that are gentle. They're words that are fitting, especially if they have to be direct. 3 more Proverbs and then we'll finish. Proverbs 10:19, when words are many, transgression is not lacking, but whoever restrains his lips is prudent. I mean, ironically, there are a lot of Proverbs that even as they attest to the power of the tongue, they also give us pause, encouragement to make sure our words are well chosen and well timed. Because when you speak too much, sin is not far behind. There is a time to speak. And sometimes the best word you can give is just your presence silently. Job's friends practiced that. Many of you remember that. They should have just held on to that longer. But at least they started well. Proverbs 17. Whoever restrains his words has knowledge, and he who has a cool spirit is a man of understanding. Even a fool who keeps silent is considered wise. When he closes his lips, he is deemed intelligent. That's just kind of funny. Sometimes the best thing to say is nothing, and people will thank you for it and be blessed by it. Last proverb. The heart of the righteous ponders how to answer, but the mouth of the wicked just pours out evil things. Let us, by the Spirit in us, be people that speak words of life. We have an incredible power to give life to our friends, our family, our co-workers, our neighbors, to any hurting person that the Lord sends us towards. We have the power to speak life. So let us speak words that are honest, consistent with reality, words that are gentle, not words that are harsh to cut people down, but words that are coming from a place of love. And let's speak directly if we have to confront somebody. If we have words of affirmation, let's speak them. And in all of these things, let's speak words that are fitting. Let me pray for us.